In 1492, as Pope Innocent VIII lay dying, his doctors had an idea. They drained the blood from 3 healthy 10-year-old boys and fed it to him. All 3 boys died. So did the Pope. And here's the thing. At the time, this was considered cutting-edge medicine. This is the story of the worst ways people ever tried to cure death. Because for thousands of years, the smartest and wealthiest people alive were certain they could beat it. They had the money. They had the best doctors of their era. And almost every single thing they tried didn't just fail. It made death come faster and far more painful. So let's start with the merely desperate and slowly work our way toward the truly insane. Number 8. Drinkable gold. For most of human history, gold wasn't just money. It was believed to be the most perfect, incorruptible substance on Earth. It never rusted. It never rotted. So the logic seemed obvious. If you could get that incorruptibility inside your body, maybe you'd stop rotting too. This idea was especially popular among alchemists in medieval Europe and ancient China. They created what they called drinkable gold, dissolving the metal into liquids meant to grant long life. You see, the problem is that getting gold to dissolve isn't easy. To do it, they often mixed it with extremely toxic substances, and even pure gold particles taken over time would build up in the body. The wealthy who drank it regularly didn't become immortal. They developed something now called gold poisoning. Their skin turning a permanent blue-gray, their nerves slowly failing, their kidneys shutting down. They had spent a fortune to drink the one thing that would never decay, and it quietly poisoned them from the inside while they waited to live forever. Number 7. The Emperor who drank mercury. If gold was the European obsession, mercury was the Eastern one. In ancient China, mercury was believed to be a key ingredient in the elixir of life, a substance that could grant immortality. And no one chased it harder than China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. This was a man who had united an entire empire, built the foundations of the Great Wall, and commanded an army of thousands. He was terrified of one thing only: dying. So he ordered his alchemists to find him the elixir that would let him rule forever. What they gave him were pills containing mercury. Now, his physicians genuinely believed this was working. The mercury made him feel strange, altered, different, and he took that as proof it was changing him into something beyond human. But here's the thing. It was slowly destroying his brain and his organs. The very pills meant to make him immortal are believed to have driven him to madness and killed him at just 49 years old. And in the cruelest twist of all, he was buried in a tomb its records describe as containing rivers of liquid mercury, built to flow around him for eternity. The poison that killed him was poured around his body as a monument. Number 6. Bleeding the sickness out. For over 2,000 years, doctors across the world believed in one core idea. That illness came from an imbalance of fluids inside the body, and the fix was simple. If someone was sick, you removed some of their blood to restore the balance. This was called bloodletting, and it was the single most common medical procedure in history. Doctors would open a vein or attach leeches and drain blood from patients suffering from almost anything: fevers, headaches, infections, even blood loss itself. You see, the logic created a trap. There was no escaping. If you got better, the bleeding worked. If you got worse, you clearly needed more bleeding. And so a treatment that did nothing to fight disease was given more aggressively the closer a patient came to death. The most famous victim may have been George Washington. In 1799, sick with a throat infection, his doctors drained an estimated 40% of his blood in under 12 hours. He died that night. Not from his illness, but many now believe from the cure. Number 5. The glow that promised life. When radioactivity was discovered at the start of the 20th century, no one understood what it actually was. They only knew it carried a strange, invisible energy, and energy they assumed meant life. So companies began adding radium to everything. Toothpaste, cosmetics, chocolate, and most dangerously of all, water, sold as a health tonic that promised vitality and a longer life. The most famous of these was a product called Radithor, simply radium dissolved in water. The wealthy drank it by the bottle, convinced it was restoring their youth. One of its most devoted customers was a rich American socialite and athlete named Eben Byers. He drank nearly 1,400 bottles of it. But here's the thing, radium attacks bone, and slowly, the radiation began to eat him alive from the inside. His teeth fell out, holes formed in his skull, pieces of his jaw had to be removed, until eventually most of his lower jaw was gone entirely. He died in agony, his body so radioactive he had to be buried in a lead-lined coffin. The tonic that promised to make him live forever had dissolved him while he was still alive. Number 4. Eating the dead to cheat death. This one is harder to believe because it was so widespread and lasted so long. For hundreds of years across all of Europe, the cure for death was other dead people. It was called corpse medicine, and it was practiced by everyone from peasants to kings. The belief was that the life force of a healthy person didn't fully leave their body at death, and that by consuming parts of a corpse, you could absorb what was left and strengthen your own life. So ground-up skull was stirred into drinks to cure ailments of the head. Human fat was rubbed into the skin. And most prized of all was a substance they believed was processed from preserved bodies, sold as a powerful medicine for almost any condition. Now here's where it gets worse. You might assume the bodies came from people who had already died of natural causes. For a while, they did. But demand became so high that the supply of ancient remains ran out. So fresh bodies were used instead, and a black market grew around stealing and selling the recently dead. Graves were robbed, the newly buried were dug up in the night, and eventually some people stopped waiting for natural deaths to happen at all. People trying to extend their own lives created an entire trade built on the bodies of others, and none of it worked. They were eating the dead to escape becoming one of them. Number 3. Stealing youth from the young. Remember the Pope from the very beginning of this video, the one whose doctors drained the blood of 3 young boys. That idea never died. In fact, it became one of the most persistent fantasies in the entire history of trying to beat death. The belief is simple and ancient, that the blood of the young carries vitality, and that transferring it into an old body could make that body young again. You see, in the centuries before anyone understood blood types, attempting this was almost always fatal. The body of the recipient would violently reject the foreign blood, and both the giver and the receiver frequently died. But here's the part that should disturb you most. This idea isn't safely buried in the past. In recent years, companies have appeared selling transfusions of blood plasma taken from young donors to wealthy older clients, marketed once again as a way to slow aging. Regulators have had to step in and warn the public that there is no proven benefit and real danger. 500 years after the Pope, the rich are still trying to buy youth out of someone else's veins. We just have cleaner equipment now. Number 2. Freezing yourself for a second chance. This is the most modern entry on our list, and in some ways the most hopeful, which is exactly what makes it so unsettling. The idea is called cryonics. The moment you are declared legally dead, your body, or in many cases just your head, is cooled to nearly 200 degrees below zero and stored in liquid nitrogen. The bet is that one day, future medicine will be advanced enough to revive you and cure whatever killed you. People have paid enormous sums to have this done. There are facilities right now holding hundreds of frozen bodies, waiting. But here's the thing no brochure tells you. Freezing a human body doesn't preserve it cleanly. The instant the water inside your cells freezes, it expands and turns into millions of tiny ice crystals that tear your cells apart from the inside. By the time someone is frozen, the very structure of their brain, everything that made them, may already be shredded beyond anything any future technology could ever rebuild. They didn't pause death. They may have simply found a colder, more expensive, and far more permanent version of it. Number 1. The cure that's still killing people today. Every method so far failed for the same reason. They were desperate guesses made by people who didn't understand the body. So you'd think that today, with real science, the dream would finally be in safe hands. But the oldest danger never went away. It just got more sophisticated. Right now, some of the wealthiest people on the planet are pouring billions into the goal of defeating death. Swallowing dozens of experimental pills a day, undergoing untested procedures, and using their own bodies as laboratories in the hope of being the first generation that doesn't have to die. And the pattern is exactly the same as it has always been. The Mercury Emperor was certain, the radium drinkers were certain. Every single person in this video was absolutely sure that they had finally found the answer, right up until the moment it killed them. That's the part history keeps trying to teach us, and we keep refusing to learn. The pursuit of immortality has a perfect record. Across thousands of years, every person who ever chased it has one thing in common: every single one of them is dead. And here's the final thought to sit with. The average human heart beats around 3 billion times in a lifetime, and for all of recorded history, not a single advance in wealth, power, or science has reliably added a 4th billion. We have cured plagues, we have doubled how long we live, but death itself remains exactly as undefeated as it was the day the Pope's doctors drained those 3 boys. So maybe the worst way to try to cure death isn't mercury or gold or frozen heads in a vault. Maybe it's believing you'll be the one who finally gets to keep living. If this rearranged something in your head, that's kind of the whole point of this channel. We dig up the parts history left in the footnotes, the stuff that's too strange, too dark, or too uncomfortable to make the textbook. So stick around. There's a lot more buried down here.